You know my name. Or you think you do, because you learned a story someone sold you. You say Pocahontas like it's a punchline, like it means naive, fake, a costume you can put on and take off. You throw it like a stone in your little political street fight and call it clever. But that is not what a name is. A name is a person, a body, a life that can be taken. And if you want to use my name while you argue about power in your own century, fine. Then at least have the decency to learn what was done to the person who carried it. First, Pocahontas was not even the name I lived under in my own community. It was a nickname, a label, a way others addressed me. I had other names, Matoaka and Amonute, names that meant something to the people who actually knew me. But you, 400 years later, you keep the nickname and throw away the girl. That is the pattern, isn't it? Keep what is useful. Discard what is human. Let's be accurate. Let's be sober. I was born among the Powhatan peoples, in the land you later called Virginia. My father was Wahun Seneca, Powhatan, the leader of a confederacy that knew diplomacy and war and trade and restraint long before your ships arrived. When the English came to Jamestown in 1607, I was a child. That is not an insult. It is a fact. A child does not fall in love like your movies demand. A child does not consent to being turned into a symbol for investors. A child does not exist to make conquest feel like a love story. There are stories you have been told, especially one story, that I saved Captain John Smith, placing my head upon his as clubs rose to strike. You should know this. The most dramatic version of that story appears years later, in Smith's own writing, after he had reason to sell a narrative, after he had learned the market value of wonder. Maybe something happened. Maybe it did not. I will not ask you to worship one man's memory over another's silence. Here is what you can say without romance. There was contact, there was tension, there were exchanges. The English were starving. The Powhatan world was watching. Sometimes food moved, sometimes information moved, sometimes weapons moved, sometimes kindness moved, and always, always, power moved. Now you want a neat moral, innocent natives, evil settlers, or noble settlers, savage natives. Your century loves simple stories because simple stories let you stay comfortable. But history is not comfort. History is appetite. The Jamestown venture was not merely exploration. It was business. It was extraction. It was a company looking for profit, land, labor, commodities, advantage. And when profit is the aim, human beings become instruments. You think that is a modern disease? It is not. Your century has merely perfected the machinery. You've improved the language, the paperwork, the lighting. The machinery is older. Years passed. The English did what colonizing ventures do. They expanded, fenced, demanded, and punished. Conflict sharpened, trust decayed, the contact phase ended, the control phase began. And then, in 1613, Englishmen took me. This is not legend. This is recorded. Samuel Argall, an English captain, used deception to seize me while I was among the Patawamek. I was taken as a hostage, a bargaining chip, a lever against my father. Hostage is a clean word, isn't it? It sounds like policy, diplomacy, strategy. But take away the clean word and you see the bare thing. A young woman captured and held so that men could negotiate with other men. Held first to pressure my people, then held to reshape me. I was moved to English settlements. I was instructed. I was renamed Rebecca. I was baptized into the English church. And listen carefully, I am not mocking faith. I am describing power. When a conqueror changes your name and your religion while you are in their custody, that is not spiritual awakening. That is possession wearing a halo. Call it salvation if you like. But when the captive cannot leave, it is still seizure. And then came the marriage. John Rolfe, an Englishman associated with the colony's tobacco enterprise, married me in 1614. In your world, people argue, was it love? Was it coercion? Was it politics? Here is the honest answer. You cannot see into a dead girl's private mind, and anyone who pretends otherwise is selling you another movie. But you can judge the structure. You can judge the conditions. A captive does not bargain as a free person. When your alternatives are captivity, separation from kin, pressure from those who hold you, and a world arranged by armed men, what you call choice is a word spoken for the audience. Power decides what options exist. The captive only decides which cage feels less cold. And you should notice who benefited. The colony benefited. The company benefited. The English public relations machine benefited. Because after the marriage, I was useful in a new way. Not as hostage, but as advertisement. I was sent to England in 1616 with Rolfe and our son Thomas. I was presented as evidence that the English project was righteous, civilizing, and safe. Look, they could say, see what our world can do, see how it can transform. Do you understand what that is? It is branding. It is taking a human life and converting it into a story that attracts money, legitimacy, and permission. In London and the court, I was displayed, introduced, watched, measured. Everyone looking for what they wanted to see, the tame native, the converted native, the proof that the empire's appetite was virtuous. I met kings and courtiers. I wore the clothing. I stood in the rooms. And the whole time, the point was not me. The point was what my existence could justify. That is what it means to become a mascot. You are not allowed to be complicated. You are not allowed to be angry. You are not allowed to be a person. You are a sign held up so others can feel clean. And then, on the journey back across the Atlantic, I fell ill. In 1617, at Gravesend in England, I died. I was about 21, perhaps 22. Young enough that your modern world would still call me so full of life. I was buried at St. George's Church in Gravesend. That is the historically grounded outline. Those are the bones. And bones are what remain when people are turned into stories. Now, hold still for a moment. This is the hinge. I am not here as a holy witness, but as a constructed voice, meant to make the pattern visible. This is not a recovered speech. It is an exercise. Do not borrow my name as proof. Test the pattern. That pattern is why you are hearing me now, why my story matters in your century, when you find yourselves shocked, again and again, that power can consume bodies and call itself respectable. Some of you want to treat one scandal as an aberration, a single monster, a glitch. That is comforting. It is also false. In your day, you have names you whisper, Epstein and others, and you argue as though the name is the explanation. But a name is not the engine. The engine is the permission. And listen, I am not asking you to pretend the centuries are identical. They are not. I am asking you to notice the pattern. He thrived not only because he was clever, but because he operated in a world that allows powerful people to treat other human beings as assets, especially young women, especially the vulnerable, especially those without kin that can protect them. A world where status becomes a shield and wealth becomes a substitute for scrutiny. You want a word for it. Some in your age might call it trafficking. And I can hear the objection already. You'll say that is a modern word, a legal word, a word for dark alleys and digital shadows. You'll say it doesn't belong in the 1600s. Fine. Keep your linguistic comfort if you must. You want a legal term, as if naming a thing is the same as restraining it. That is the kind of magic your age believes in. I want you to see the structure. What else do you call it when a young woman is taken by force, moved across borders, stripped of her name, and used as a commodity to settle a debt or seal a deal? In my time, we didn't need the fancy word because the act was the air we breathed. It was called hostage-taking. It was called tribute. It was called the rights of the victor. But the structure is familiar. The belief that a body can be a bridge, that a girl can be a bargaining chip, that if you hold someone long enough and isolate them from their tribe long enough, you can break the old person and manufacture a new one that serves your interests. Whether you do that to win a war in Virginia or to furnish a mansion somewhere warm, the soul of the act is the same. The conversion of a human being into an instrument of power. So, call it trafficking or call it colonial diplomacy, the captive doesn't care what you name the bars. The body inside them only knows the same fact. Someone else controls the exits. And if you are serious, if you have even a scrap of seriousness, you will admit that the logic of it is old. A powerful man sees a young body as leverage. A network of respectable people may look away because confronting the truth would threaten their status. A story is built to sanitize the arrangement. Mentorship, modeling, opportunity, education, civilization, saving, and the public is invited to consume the story instead of defending the person. In my century, the respectable cover story was conversion and civilizing. In yours, it is consent twisted into a legalistic trick, or she wanted it, whispered like a prayer to absolve men with money. Different words. Same absolution. Now Steelman the objection, the reasonable objection, because I know some of you are already sharpening it. You cannot compare the 1600s to modern sex trafficking. Correct. Not perfectly. Not one-to-one. History is not a stencil. But if you think that means you can dismiss the pattern, then answer me. Are you being careful, or are you being comfortable? What I am giving you is not a cheap equivalence. It is a structural warning. When a society treats people as instruments, when it teaches men that power entitles them to bodies and teaches institutions that reputation matters more than truth, then trafficking is not a surprise. It is an outcome. And if your response is to sneer, if you reach for a fashionable insult instead of an honest look, then ask yourself what you are defending: a principle or your comfort. I am not asking you to perform guilt. I am not asking you to recite slogans. I am asking you to look at a pattern without flinching. Here is another Steelman for another audience. Some of you on the left will want to use me as a weapon too. You will want to turn me into a mascot for your righteousness. You will say my name to signal your virtue, then go right back to consuming the same machine that turns women into products and children into content. Do not do that. If you want to honor me, do not use me as a fashionable pin on your jacket. Use my story as a test of your seriousness. Ask yourself, when the powerful are accused, do you demand evidence and restraint, or do you protect your side? When institutions fail, do you insist on limits, or do you shrug and say, that's just how it is? When a girl is reduced to a punchline, do you laugh because it is easier than caring? When the story is convenient, do you consume it, or do you interrogate who it serves? And to those who are tempted by cynicism, those who think it's always been corrupt, nothing can change, I will tell you this: cynicism is not wisdom. Cynicism is surrender dressed as insight. What happened to me was not inevitable. It was chosen by people, by institutions, by incentives. A company chose to treat land as merchandise. A colony chose to treat a girl as leverage. A court chose to treat a captive as entertainment. A public chose to consume the story instead of questioning the structure. And your era, your very modern era, still makes these choices, just faster, just with better lighting, just with lawyers. This machinery does not run on stupidity. It runs on cowardice, because too many people are trained to respect wealth more than truth, status more than scrutiny, proximity to power more than the protection of the weak. Because the price of speaking is often higher than the price of silence until it isn't. Now, one more reset, because this matters. Here is my demand, and it is not partisan. Stop using my name as a slur. Stop using girls as currency. Stop worshiping success when it is clearly built on secrecy and harm. Stop confusing a polished man with a restrained man. Stop calling it complicated when it is actually simple. Somebody is being used. And when somebody is being used, the first act is not a slogan. It is refusal. You want a principle you can live by, one that doesn't require you to join a tribe or memorize a catechism? Here it is. A society is only as strong as its ability to restrain its powerful men, not its slogans, not its flags, not its movies, its restraints, its willingness to punish friends as readily as enemies, its willingness to protect the nameless as fiercely as the famous, its refusal to let money rewrite the rules. Because if you cannot restrain the powerful, you will not remain free. You will become, slowly, politely, property. I was made into property in the oldest way: seizure, custody, renaming, display. You live in an age that flatters itself as enlightened. Prove it. And if you want one last truth, one that should sting, because it is still happening, you do not have to burn a village to colonize a person. You only have to teach the world to laugh when she speaks. My name was Matoaka. You can keep calling me Pocahontas if you must. Just stop pretending it is harmless.